Problem 1-119. Given the functions f of x is equal to the square root of x plus 4 and g of x equals x squared minus x, find the value of each expression below. Letter A, find function f of 5. So normally we have f of x in there, and when we have x in there, we can't simplify that anymore because we don't know what its value is. So we're going to take it here, and we are going to input 5 into the function. So f of 5 should equal the square root. Instead of having x, we're going to replace it with the 5. So we have 5 plus 4, which is going to be 9. So we have this is going to equal the square root of 9. And the square root of 9 we know is going to be 3. So our final answer should be f of 5. Remember, this is what's been input, and we're showing what the output is going to be. So f of 5 equals 3. That is the answer for A. Letter B, we're going to look at function g. So instead of g of x equaling x squared minus x, we're going to input -1 into the function. Got to be careful here when you're dealing with the negative when you already have minus signs there. So we're going to put it in for our x squared. So when we do that, we're going to replace that x with a -1, and it's very smart to put parentheses around it. Okay, because if you don't, it's going to give you a different value, especially if you're typing it into your calculator instead of just doing the math. Then we're going to subtract an x instead of an x, but it's going to be a -1, sorry. So you have to just think about when you're putting in negatives, I always put parentheses around them just to be safe. So -1 squared is like saying -1 times -1, which is +1. And when you subtract a negative, it's the same thing as adding a positive. So we end up with 1 plus 1, which is going to give us 2. So g of -1 should give you 2. Letter C says they want us to find x if f of x equals 10. So with this one, you're thinking about this. Right now we know that f of x equals the square root of x plus 4. That's what we're given up here at the top. We're now saying that f of x also equals 10. Now when we take this and we think about if the square root of x plus 4 is equal to f of x, and then we also know 10 is equal to f of x, we know f of x is equal to f of x. That means we could take it and substitute our 10 in for our f of x and give us the equation that looks like this. The square root of x plus 4 should equal 10. And now when you're solving this, if you think about it, you could use common sense. If you just did think about the square root of what number do we have to have in here equals 10, well, that would have to be 100, right? The square root of 100 equals 10. But if we're looking to show that or looking to undo what's going on, we have to cancel out the square root by squaring it. That's the inverse operation. But if we do it to one side of the equation, we have to do it to the other. What you'll see we end up with here is going to be x plus 4 has got to equal 100. In which case, when you subtract 4 from each side, you're going to end up with x has to be 96. Because when we plug in 96 there, 96 plus 4 is 100. The square root of 100 is 10. So we know that that is correct there. All right, letter D, very similar type of problem. We already know that g of x is equal to x squared minus x. And we know that g of x also equals 6. So if we've got x squared minus x equals our function g of x, and it also equals 6, then we know that these two have to equal each other. So let's set up that equation. We're going to have x squared minus x equals 6. Now we've got two different x terms here. You've got an x squared and an x, which means you can't isolate one because you still have the other one to deal with. So we know it's quadratic. We're going to go ahead and move our 6 over to each side. Or I'm sorry, from the side to the other side here. We're going to have x squared minus x minus 6 equals 0. A couple ways you could solve this. You could use the quadratic formula, or you could simply look to factor it. That's up to you, whichever way you want to do it. Remember, your quadratic formula is going to be x equals negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. That's if you choose to use the quadratic formula. In which case here you have a is 1, b is negative 1, and c is negative 6. That's if you want to use that. I'm not using that. I'm going to go ahead here. I know that when I factor this, I should end up with x and x. And I'm going to have, one's going to be plus, one's going to be minus, and I'm going to have a 3 here and a 2 here, which then gives me x plus 2 equals 0, x minus 3 equals 0, using the zero product property. This times this gives us 0, so one of these two factors has to equal 0, which means that x equals negative 2 or x equals positive 3. So there's our answers for these four. We've got f of 5 equals 3, g of negative 1 equals 2, x equals 96, and x equals negative 2 or x equals positive 3. This is problem 1-19. Hopefully you got that right. If you have questions, make sure you try to find time to ask your teacher before your test. Thanks for watching.